Hi guys. This manhwa is called, Rather Than the Son, I'll Take the Father. Enjoy watching.
The Marquis of Morgana can be found in the capital. It was a huge and grand mansion with elegant interior and exterior design. Inside, the young lady of the house was reading a document, and she remarked that the conditions seemed good. It contained the information about their marriage. They would have a simple one, and after that they would live in the north. In front of her was the silver-haired man who she was supposed to marry. He reminded her beforehand that luxury had no place in their new life, urging her to act as the lady of the house was expected to. However, the lady seemed uninterested in his words. He was halted when he heard her enjoying the pastry. With her little smile, she commented on how tasty the macarons were and expressed her desire to buy more. Gilbert could not believe that he would be able to confirm the rumors about her being the queen of the social scene were true. She had pink hair and flawless skin. There was no doubt that the crown prince would be in love with her. A few days ago, the nobles gathered in the imperial ballroom. The crown prince approached Lady Manhwa to show her his bald head, claiming that it was the result of following her words. Gilbert was not the type of person who could easily trust the rumors, but as he watched her delicately wipe her lips, he found himself believing every word. As she calmly lifted her tea from its saucer, she smiled and agreed to the marriage proposal. That made him clasp his hands and praise her decision. Besides, refusal was not truly an option since it was written in the contract agreement. However, the lady smirked, questioning his confidence that she was going to marry him. Gilbert halted as he did not expect her to say that, leaving him confused. With his widened eyes and angled eyebrows, he inquired what she meant. So, Lady Morgana clarified that she had no intention of marrying him. Instead, she would like to abide by the agreement by tying the knot with his father. Back in the days when it was about 300 years ago, there were two aging nobles having a toast of wine. They were the heads of the noble families and the ones who created the contract. It was written that their descendants were meant to marry each other. However, since the gender and the age gap would be uncertain, they set some limitations. It sounded like a joke between two old men out of being drunk. However, the main problem that required the agreement to happen was the paper on which the contract was written. Despite throwing it into the scorching lava or even into the deepest part of the ocean, the paper could still mysteriously return to its place. Gilbert shouted in disbelief after hearing her ridiculous decision. He stood while holding the contract paper, pointing out that breaking the contract would bring misfortune to their families. But she just stared at it as if his concern did not affect her. In the novel, the usual Manhwa is weak and submissive. If she were her normal version, she would have just accepted the proposal without facing the man's pressure. However, Miss Kim, who was from another world yet currently living in her consciousness, was different, as she knew the ending of the story. Long ago, the Grand Duke's household adopted two sons, and they were Gilbert and Regan. Regan, the second son, was a good person and talented as the great magician, making him the protagonist. On the other hand, Gilbert, the first son, was the opposite of him. He was filled with inferiority. He would always be behind his brother, glaring at him sharply as if he were the person he despised the most. Thus, his attitude made him the villain of the novel. After a year, the villain brought the daughter of a noble family and introduced her as his wife. That unfortunate woman was Manhwa. Her family had suffered a series of failed investments, bringing them to the brink of bankruptcy. With their reputation weakened and no means to resist, they were forced to comply with Gilbert's demands and were pressured into marriage through the binding terms of the family contract. As a result, they relocated to the north, where she lived her life full of misery. At her lowest, she regretted being married to that man. If she was reborn in that life again, she swore not to make the same mistake again. However, that miserable part of her life will not happen anymore. Miss Kim, who was living in the conscious mind of the lady, saved her family from their downfall, so it was possible to save her fate as well. She revived the glory of the family by obtaining much wealth, just like a room full of gold and jewels. Gilbert shouted her name again in frustration, but the lady remained composed and kept her faint smile. His brows then furrowed, questioning if he had wronged her to have that kind of treatment from her. Manhwa acted as if she was trying to think about it, but she just reasoned that she was sincerely curious about his father. She even expressed her admiration for how he raised an impressive man like Lord Gilbert. She then grabbed the contract and pointed to the specific clause stating there were no restrictions on age, status, etc. when choosing the marriage partner. Since the Grand Duke was unmarried, he was also a valid candidate to become her husband. Gilbert's eyes widened as he learned that. He could not believe that it was also included in the contract. Moreover, he wondered what was going on in her mind, knowing that the Grand Duke was an old man. In desperation, he offered her jewels, dresses, anything to change her mind. He accused her of greed, questioning why the position of the Duchess was not enough. Placing a hand to his chest, he asked bitterly if this was about him being adopted. Being sick of his words, Manhwa shook her bell to call her maid, Sarah. The servant entered immediately, and she ordered her to escort the lord out of her place. Though Gilbert insisted that there were things that he wanted to say, the lady had already decided to send him out. She even smiled sweetly, asking him to send her regards to his father, and addressed him as her son. Her audacity to mock her made him stare in disbelief. At the snowy north, where the grand ducal residence of Kalakis stood, the place seemed to be haunted as it was enveloped with a dark aura. Eerie sounds can be heard, even murmurs that no one could ever understand. There was a snake who had the ability to talk. That time it was trying to wake up someone. Other than that, there were also other wild animals residing with it. Their eyes were closed as if they were sleeping. The snake slithered closer to the man who was lying on the couch with a book covering his face, questioning how long the person was planning to sleep. That man was the Lord of the North, the one and only Atis Kalakis, who seemed too occupied by so much laziness. After the day of her meeting with Gilbert, day or night, a messenger came on his behalf to request to meet him again. 10 days ago, during nighttime, there was a man looking for Lady Manhwa. After a few days, the same man came to the house in broad daylight. By the third visit, his composure had cracked, nearly in tears as he pleaded for her to see his lord. Until the recent day of his visit, he expected that nothing had changed, but the lady still refused his Lord Gilbert. From that day, he was already fully convinced that she would never come to him. One morning, while the lady was enjoying a cake, she was halted when Sarah suddenly burst into her room calling her name. Manhwa told her to calm down as she asked what happened. The maid answered there was a gift from Lord Gilbert that infuriated her, knowing the meaning behind it. She then showed her a brown basket holding funeral chrysanthemums. She exclaimed that it was already absurd, thinking that he had already crossed the line for being inconsiderate. Manhwa glanced at the flowers and disregarded the insult, reasoning that the young master had not intended the meaning of it. She resumed eating her cake as she claimed that he probably chose them for their elegant white color. After all, he was the type of person who seemed to think that all flowers are the same. Still, Sarah remained irritated, doubting the Duke's family's knowledge of common sense and etiquette. Moreover, she was already sick of how they bothered the servants rather than doing something useful. Hearing it, Manhwa agreed with her words and pointed out that they were irresponsible on that part. Later on, she stood as she invited Sarah to hang out with her instead of being too bothered by Gilbert's act. Besides, it had been a while since she went out. While holding a gold gun, she declared that their goal was to spend every penny before returning. The maid even saluted in agreement with her. As they were about to leave, she instructed her to incinerate the flowers. At the town, Lady Manhwa arrived at the boutique. They seemed to value her as their customer, as they closed their shop to be exclusive for the lady and her friends. Other uninformed clients were surprised to know that the reservation was already fully booked. The owner of the shop warmly welcomed the eldest daughter of the Morgana family, Lady Manhwa, who looked so elegant in her pink dress that perfectly suited her long pink hair. As they sat on the couch, the attendant decided to leave them after reminding them to call her if she was needed. The girl beside Manhwa suddenly clasped her hand with hers, expressing her gratitude to be invited by her. She was Charles Morgas, the eldest daughter of the third Marquis. It was a good time and place since she had been wondering what dress was suitable for Monica's birthday party. But for Lady Morgana, she was more pleased that she was able to join with her. Her friend then stated how her presence brought her a sense of relief, expecting her to have her assistance in choosing some. Recalling what happened at the same birthday party the previous year, she felt so humiliated. It was the time that Monica mocked her dress and scolded her. The celebrant was visibly annoyed, but all she could do by that time was scratch her head. Later on, Charles was taken aback when Mayvaya gently lifted her chin to comfort her, promising that she'd wear something even Monica couldn't criticize. Moved by her kindness, Charles hugged her suddenly, forgiving her support. Meanwhile, outside the shop, an attendant dealt with another lady. Although there was already a closed sign attached to the entrance, she even had to apologize for not having a slot for her. But the red-haired lady insisted that she had always been welcomed before. The staff only explained that their current customer arrived first. Hearing their voices choosing an outfit infuriated her, and she demanded to know who had dared to exclude her. Recognizing the voice of the furious lady, the guests inside realized who was at the door. Despite the attempt to stop her, the red-haired woman forced her way in, claiming that those voices were from her friend. As she entered, she saw Mayvaya sitting on the couch and questioned her if she was right in claiming that they were friends. The red-haired lady was Monica Elaine, the eldest daughter of the Elaine family and also the third Marquise. Lady Morgana just asked her what's the matter as the other girls greeted her. Monica's eyes laid on the woman beside her, and she had not expected Charles Morgas to be with them. When they asked her why it surprised her, Lady Elaine claimed that she had no taste in fashion, and that even purchasing an expensive one would still look more worthless than a one-silver outfit. Lady Morgas did not argue and noted that Eve offered her some help. Mayvaya agreed, however the newly arrived guest remained displeased seeing them together. Unexpectedly, Monica sat in between them. She even snatched the brochure, declaring that she was fated to be there to choose a dress for her. But Charles tried to refuse her politely, so the red-haired lady took it as an offense of doubting her fashion sense. She even added that Mayvaya was naturally beautiful and would look good even in a sack of wheat. However, that would not indicate her good sense of style. Hearing it, Lady Morgana could not tell whether she was complimenting her or something. She then stared at the red-haired lady. Originally, Monica was one of the antagonists in the novel, but upon meeting her, she seemed like an adorable friend yet cunning. That made her wonder if it was because they were now completely different compared to the original ones. Later on, Monica found something suitable for Charles. For someone with a plain impression like her, she suggested the purple dress from the brochure for her. It was some kind of flashy and feminine outfit. But Lady Morgas doubted that it would look good on her. The red-haired lady still insisted, urging her to try it and share her opinion afterward. Because of that, Eve interrupted and told Monica to try it instead of Charles. She was taken aback when she even held her hair while claiming that the dress would also match the color of her hair. That only made her brows furrow, not because of her words but because of the way she said it. Even their other friends in the shop thought that she looked like her dog trying to tame. Later on, they continued browsing for Charles's dress. Mayvaya suggested the 17p outfit and commented that color with some atmosphere would suit her. Lady Morgas appeared delighted and asked if it would really suit her. Confident in her choice, she encouraged her to try it. Monica, although she was in between them, felt excluded after they disregarded her suggestion. So she stirred the mood by bringing up a recent rumor about Lady Morgana. She inquired if Lord Gilbert's proposal to her was true and if she had accepted it. Silence filled the boutique while their eyes were on her as Lady Elaine remarked that her action was some kind of charity before her wedding. The other ladies were flustered by the news, knowing that he was an adopted son of the Duke, and tried to confirm it from Eve. She honestly answered them that she had rejected the Lord. Monica exclaimed as if she was already expecting her to respond that way since he was a half-decent and illegitimate child. She even mocked his audacity for acting as if he was a direct descendant of the North. Her words seemed to be out of line, so Charles scolded her for being too harsh towards Gilbert. But Monica stood by her statement, believing what she said was right when she only wanted to imply that Mayvaya deserved better. She even pointed out that she would suffer in the desolate land of the North if she married him. Lady Morgana then interrupted, assuring her to not worry about her. As she stood, she claimed that she would live happily with her husband, who would look only at her in that breezy place. With that, she walked out after bidding them goodbye, reasoning that she was not feeling well. As she made her way out, she could not help but wonder if things would end up the same way for her again. In the novel, Monica often shares tea with Mayvaya and always grabs the opportunity to speak harshly about Gilbert. But if Eve responded by mistake, her words would turn against her. As a result, her husband would hurt her, thinking that she was the one who said those things. Throughout her experience, she wondered if her sufferings were not yet enough. Worse, she even witnessed how Monica spent a night with him. From that memory, she was hoping for both her and Monica to never have any connection with that person again. As she went out, she was surprised to see the person she despised the most waiting for her. Seeing her made him think that she had quickly moved on. Upon seeing her, Gilbert remarked on how quickly she seemed to have recovered. As he strode closer, her eyes remained on him. They remained facing each other for a while, and he questioned the lady if there was anything she wanted to say. She then looked down and told him that she had not recovered from her fever yet, claiming that her condition seemed to worsen if she had not bought anything. It seemed that shopping had become her remedy to feel better. Because of that unexpected response, Gilbert laughed hard, making her wonder if he had already lost his sanity completely, although he had never been normal from the very beginning. He then assumed that her behavior might have been meant to fluster him, admitting that he had misinterpreted her intentions. She clarified again that she did not want to marry him. However, the man refused to believe that she was serious about it. Because of that, she attempted to make her decision clearer by repeating her words. Later on, she was halted when he abruptly held her tiny arm, warning her to stop her childish stunts, and claimed that he was not going to tolerate it any further. It made her grit her teeth, realizing that as she let her guard down, he had already revealed his true colors. Before the situation could escalate further, his friend Charles came out and stopped Gilbert. She bravely stepped in between them, guarding Manhwa with a sword in her hand. The young master then told her that he had just come there to have a word with the person who broke her promises, leaving the lady confused. He then urged Lady Morgause to step aside for a moment. Another woman came out after sensing the commotion outside. Charles remained firm on her ground, threatening to call a guard if he persisted, while her fingers were ready to draw her sword. He was taken aback when she glared at him sharply. It was a familiar gaze. He remembered that he had received the same look from his father after presenting him with a letter. The Grand Duke had dropped the letter in silence, told him to handle it himself, and not to return with something so disgraceful again. After saying that, his father glared at him, making him think of himself like he was an insect. Seeing that same look in Charles's eyes triggered his anger, questioning her audacity to glare at him that way. In a burst of pride and delusion, he declared that he would become the Duke of Kalakis and rule over the northern region. His shout drew some attention from those who were just passing by the street. They started murmuring while looking at the scene they made. Before things could worsen, Manhwa interrupted and urged Gilbert to leave, or else he would be arrested if they reported him. When he glanced behind him, he was surprised by the growing crowd. Later on, a carriage arrived. The maid from the inside suddenly called Eve to get in. Charles then pushed her to go up quickly. Before she could leave, she bid goodbye to her friend and thanked her. As she entered the carriage, Lord Gilbert called her again, saying he would come to escort her to the royal ball. But the lady, clearly unimpressed, asked if her behavior toward him hadn't already made her intentions clear. She then clarified that she had no plan to attend. With a sly smile, she raised her middle finger to him, urging him to do the same if they happened to meet again. That would be the formal way of greeting each other. As they went on, her finger remained like that, and she waved it outside the window. After her bold rejection, turning down the partnership proposals became a trend among the nobility. Women began refusing unwanted marriage proposals, and some even sent a flower as a symbol of declination. Just like what she ordered for Sarah, she burned the funeral flowers in their fireplace. When the night came, Lady Morgana was so tired when she arrived at their residence. She even let herself lie down on their couch. The maid then brought her some water while telling her to be careful. Since she just returned, Sarah thought of getting her some food first. As Manhwa got the glass of water from the tray, she thanked her for her service. But then she brought up the topic about the man earlier. She could not help but wonder how he even knew that he went out for a break, especially when it was not even a scheduled visit. That also made Sarah wonder about it and speculate that perhaps someone had followed her. Manhwa then looked at her. In that case, if someone had been tailing them, they would have noticed immediately. The maid then agreed and became regretful for not being by her side when the commotion happened. She then told the lady to ensure that she brought guards whenever she went out. However, as the lady was concerned about the welfare of her people, she claimed that bringing some with her would not be easy. When the maid inquired why, she explained that Gilbert was someone who was highly skilled in swordsmanship. Therefore, he could easily overpower any typical guard. Horrified by that idea, Sarah clutched tightly on the tray. Thus, she wondered what else they could do for the security of the lady. Manhwa then assured her that things would be fine. Besides, there was one last resort she could rely on if something urgent happened. Sarah, troubled, asked if she truly intended to use it. Manhwa confirmed, though it would be only once. When she mentioned that she would not be able to look at her husband again after their marriage, the maid inquired who the person she was planning to marry was. Just as she was about to reply, they were halted when they noticed something broke in by her window. It was a tiny creature with black feathers. The maid was flabbergasted as she almost cried in worry that it might be a monster or a beast. From a distance, she saw that it was a small bird. With its black feather, she raised her hand to invite it to come. The bird then landed on her finger. Being that close, she figured out that it was a cute crow. When she said hello, it even gleefully responded to her. However, she was halted when she realized something. It was not an ordinary one, it was a demon that served the Duke. She stared at the bird and inquired to confirm her suspicion. At the north, the Grand Duke was scanning through the pages of the documents. He read it was not a plea but a bold declaration of marriage intent. The picture of a woman with pink hair was even attached to the document. Later on, he calls his raven and orders him to watch over Gilbert's actions and keep an eye on the lady named Manhwa Austin Morgana as well. That was what happened before the crow was placed on the woman's palm. She stared closely at it, and she could not believe that the Grand Duke would have such a cute servant. That night, at the Grand Duke Kalaki's mansion in the capital, Gilbert was so angry after smashing everything in his room. He could not accept the fact that Lady Manhwa was rejecting any of his advances towards her to the point that he felt like she was looking down on him. He grinned as if he was someone who was about to lose himself, thinking that Manhwa was disregarding the position waiting ahead of him. In the future, he believed that he was going to become the head of the Kalaki's family, an opportunity to be his wife that she had always rejected. From the outside of the window, the crow that the Grand Duke had sent was watching over him. From there, he did not know that he was being monitored by his father. Unfortunately, his claim would never happen in the future. In heading the family, there was only one person needed in that position, and that was Adis Kalakis. Later on, the butler came and brought what he asked for. Without any hesitation, he immediately grabbed the tray from him. As he held that, he declared that it was already over for the lady. By that moment, the crow remained watching every move he made. His hand was already filled with bruises, holding the tray with the folded paper. His smirk reflected on it. Whatever he was thinking, one thing is for sure, he was planning something disturbing. On the next day, the raven was found sleeping soundly on Manhwa's bed. The lady tried to wake it up, calling him sleepyhead. He even made a few movements before he finally opened his eyes and was flustered upon seeing the lady. She even asked where he was going on that day. As the bird confusedly stared at her, she thought that there would be something exciting that was about to happen soon. That day, she decided to start her moves. She had been studying that man for longer than Gilbert. Throughout her investigation, she gained confidence that she already knew him better. In her current life, she was determined to change her fate and not to repeat the same mistake again. Later that day, Eve prepared her horse, Elisa. Sarah was worried about her, but the lady assured her that along with her plan, she promised that she would not let her horse be harmed. However, it did not bring relief to the maid, who suggested at least bringing a guard with her. Eve reminded her once again that she would not risk the life of someone against Gilbert. She was certain that not even the average person could beat him. Moreover, he was the type of person that does not want other people to see him in shame, so if someone else came, he would back away. As she hopped on the horse, she was determined that it was the perfect time to settle everything. Before she left, the crow flew to her again. She smiled upon sensing its concern to assure it that she would be all right so it could rest peacefully. She had already lost count of how many times she assured them that she could handle herself. She then steered the reins and left. On her way, there was a person hiding behind the tree waiting for her. As soon as he saw her horse approaching, he immediately went to block her way with his sword. Fortunately, the lady was alert enough to save her horse. She was surprised by that sudden attack and questioned the young master about his unnecessary action. Gilbert then claimed that it was just his way of greeting her and returned his sword to its case. He then apologized for startling her and wished that he did not make her mad. Eve instantly forgave him and asked him to step aside so she could pass. He agreed, however, he remained in his place and complimented her posture, which was like a mature horseback rider. That made the lady grip the rein tightly. She could not believe that he blocked her way only to say those things. Just like what Gilbert expected, the young lady got infuriated instantly. Because of that, he immediately revealed his intention. He wanted to give her another chance and ordered her to let him escort her to the upcoming imperial event. The lady halted upon hearing how informally he talked to her. He even pointed his finger at her, claiming that his father would never marry someone like her. He described him as a ruler who saw people as livestock to be used and discarded. Moreover, his father would only neglect her after their marriage and would not be able to protect her from the beasts because he does not need a wife to use. But Lady Manhwa did not seem to take his words seriously as she smiled, thinking that the Grand Duke was more benevolent than what he described. She even insulted him for what he had become to his family. From what she knew, Gilbert only caused trouble, unlike his good brother. She highlighted how he only became a stain on their family's name, making him more charmless, like someone who deserved to be disposed of. His hand clenched upon hearing her every word insulting his being. As the lady was satisfied to make him understand what she meant, she decided to leave. Gilbert watched her go away and declared that she had lost her last chance. He was already full of anger from the humiliation, rejection, and insult that he gained from her. He wanted her to pay the price for it, making her regret everything. With so much anger, he ran towards her with his sword, ensuring to attack her ankle so she would not be able to attend the ball. However, he was caught off guard when the lady suddenly jumped off the horse and forcefully kicked his abdomen. He could not believe that she was able to counter his attack in that instant. With another kick, she was able to turn him down, making him lose his grip on his sword. Just like him, Manhwa was already sick of him. Despite everything, she had always addressed him with composure. But this time, as she jumped off midair for one last strike, her fury matched his. She had reached her limit, and now she would make him understand just how deeply he had underestimated her. While jumping in the air, ready for another kick, she pointed out how she maintained formality when conversing with him, yet he still underestimated her. With his widened eyes, Gilbert could not believe that a woman with a fragile frame possessed such strength and agility. 11 years ago, the young Manhwa encountered a beast hiding in an old man figure. He unexpectedly offered her a contract. The man was on the verge of his demise, so he asked the girl to prepare his grave in exchange for granting her an undefeatable power. That offer was not specified in the story. As a young girl, she feared the stranger and froze where she stood. However, she understood that if she rejected his offer, it would cost her life. Therefore, she held onto his clothes and told him that she would do what he wanted. That was when the old man brought out a box that contained several bottles of his blood. He told her that in an urgent time she would have immense strength after drinking it. Though it came with potential side effects, she would be able to borrow his power for a brief time. But then, there would be consequences if someone disturbed his grave. As a young girl, she almost puked at the thought of drinking someone else's blood. So, the mysterious man assured me that he would make it tasty like the strawberry. For some reason, she thought that the beast was also kind. Back in the present, Gilbert was still in a rage even after being defeated by her. He exclaimed whether she gained her power from the demon. At some point, it sounded like it was. The young master then exclaimed that he was going to report her to the imperial family. That only made the young lady laugh, explaining that between them, he was the one who attacked first, so no one would believe that a girl put him in that position. She then inquired of him, urging him to think that if he were the king, who would he believe in that situation? With that, he was taken aback upon sensing that Manhwa seemed like his father or someone who was even stronger than him. There seemed to be another soul that possessed her and glowed in her countenance. From a distance, the crow silently followed the lady. Through that, the Grand Duke witnessed what happened between her and his adopted son. Upon observing her, he was impressed and wondered about her composure and how she was able to see the coming moves towards her. Later on, someone came with his horse. It was Colin Turner, a close friend of Gilbert. He was surprised to see him in that area with the young lady. As he dismounted, he greeted Lady Mayvia and introduced himself. Then, turning to Gilbert, he whispered in disbelief, asking what was going on. He had assumed they were just meeting for a quick conversation and never imagined that Gilbert's opponent would be a woman. With that, he immediately forced his head down and asked forgiveness from the lady on behalf of his friend's rudeness. He even complimented her before dragging Gilbert toward his horse, insisting he mounts quickly. Before the sun came down, Lady Mayvia decided to head home as well. By the time she returned, night had already fallen. Sarah was clearly worried when she saw her injured ankle and asked where she got it. The young lady just looked at her swollen bruises and muttered that it seemed the beast's blood hadn't lasted very long. Sarah reminded her to become more careful, but she was more infuriated by how the other dared to hurt her. Because of that, she would not be able to attend the Imperial Ball, an event she assumed her lady had been looking forward to. That made her wonder if she ever mentioned something like that. It was the first time she heard that she was excited for that event. The maid then explained that she ordered so many dresses, thinking that it might be for the ball. But Lady Mayvia reasoned that it was just her way of coping with stress. Sarah also added that the coming event would be so grand since, aside from the prince, the emperor would be attending too, so she could not accept that Eve would have missed it just because of Gilbert. She begged the lady to attend and promised to apply compresses on her ankle every day until it healed. But Mayvia remained uninterested in attending since she had no partner for that event. Suddenly, she was surprised when the maid shouted after seeing the bird inside her room again. Eve then greeted the crow, asking if he was all right, to which it responded as if he did. She then started recounting how composed she had been earlier, proudly saying that even the Grand Duke would have been impressed. She smiled, thinking that her stunt would make him fail her. Later on, the raven went to the invitation card that was placed on the top of her drawer and started pecking at it. Eve wondered if the bird was already hungry to act that way. Upon seeing that it was the imperial invitation, the maid thought that the raven also signaled her to attend, which it affirmed in response. Sarah begged her once again together with the bird, however they received the same response. Eve did not want to go, leaving them defeated. The maid also pointed out that Gilbert would certainly prepare himself to impress her, but for the lady, he was exactly her problem. Besides, the person she wanted to see would not come anyway. In the story, the Grand Duke came to the capital only once. He hadn't even come when his own son's regency was threatened. What more in coming for a mere ball? From that day, she realized that attracting the Grand Duke's interest would not be enough, so she wondered if being hurt badly by his son would lure him out. While thinking deeply, she did not notice that the crow was observing her. Later on, she stood and threw the sword to the maid, ordering her to dump it in the toilet, which made the maid complain, knowing how expensive it was. The next morning, Mayvia greeted her parents at the dining table. Her father remarked that she was late, so she apologized for it. They had that stern look on their face as she was permitted to take a seat. She inherited her white skin from them, while her hair was solely from her mother. As they joined the breakfast together, her mother suddenly inquired if there was something bothering her lately. When she denied it, Marchioness Morgana told her not to take her problems on her own, assuring her that she had them to rely on. Because of that, it made Mayvia wonder if they had heard about Gilbert since the rumors about the commotion they were involved in were already known. She gave a small laugh and assured them she was fine, trying to appear at ease. By that time, she could ask for help from her parents. However, according to the original novels, they were not close to their daughter. Even on her 6th birthday, Mayvia could only watch them from behind. They had always been too busy for their business to even celebrate special days like Christmas. She was only attended by her maid. How they asked about her at the breakfast table was new, making her wonder why they suddenly became concerned about her. Her father then assured her that their family could not be shaken by that mere fuss created by young teens her age. Her mother then commended how she handled things on her own without resorting to hiring an assassin. That made the Marchioness remember what she did when she was just 7 years old. In order to stop them from leaving their home, she lay on the floor and cried uncontrollably. It was the moment that, even if she wanted to, Eve could not forget about it. That was the same day that her parents invested half of the family's wealth into the doomed sailing business. Since she could not argue logically about it at that young age, she protested the only way a child could. Going back to the present, she could not help but complain about how it was brought up. But for her mother, she was still the same young Manhwa, and she admitted that there was a time when they forgot that she was still a child since she acted so mature for her age. That made them think that she could handle herself on her own and did not need her parents anymore. But from the moment that she had tantrums back when she was 7 years old, they realized how young she was and that she needed her parents' care, especially when she pleaded with them to stay with her. Her mother wanted her to realize that she was still suffering like a child despite her current age. At first, Manhwa thought that she could only change the fortune of their family. She had never anticipated that it would also affect their relationship. That realization made her express her heartfelt gratitude towards her parents. But her father ruined the moment, as she did not expect him to bring up that they were aware she had not found a partner yet for the ball. That made him decide that they could attend there as a family. She did not know that it was her maid who told the Marquis about it. As she had already decided not to attend, she insisted on not bothering about it. While denying it, she had not noticed the raven aiming to hit her head. She immediately stood as the butler apologized for failing to stop it. When the lady caught it, her father inquired about the bird, so she told him that it was her pet. Upon glancing at them, she worried that they might notice that it was not an ordinary bird. Because of that, her mother then remarked that her taste had visibly changed, at which she just laughed a little. She then tried to excuse herself to feed the bird, reasoning that it might be hungry. As she entered the room, she immediately inquired of the bird whether there was something wrong or anything else. Suddenly, the raven spit out the imperial seal and inquired if that was from the invitation card for the imperial ball, to which it responded that it was. She then reminded him that she did not have a partner to bring. Perhaps the crow wanted to be her partner, however they could not, given the difference in their height. As she imagined how they would dance, they would never be matched. If they could not dance properly, he could not be considered her partner. That made the raven plead more to make her attend the ball. As she pondered more, the thought of the person she wanted to see at that ball excited her. Meanwhile, at the north, the Grand Duke was told that the capital procession was already set and asked if they should now leave. Duke Kalakis then replied that he would take the lead for their journey. Before they left, his room lit up brightly, which could even be seen outside his window as he cast some spell. At the capital, Manhwa returned to the dining table, so her mother thought of preparing tea for her. But she stopped her and told her that there was something important she had to say. First and foremost, she thanked them for inviting her to the ball, which for them was not a big deal. She then inquired if at that time she could act like a child again. When the Marquis sensed that she might be pertaining to the contract, he told her to leave it to him, but she insisted that she wanted to fulfill what was written on it. To their horror, since she had been rejecting Gilbert, who was close to her age, the remaining men from their family were still kids. By that time, it was a crime to marry the younger ones. Manhwa immediately denied their thoughts as she revealed that there was still an unmarried man from the house Kalakis and specified that it was the Grand Duke. An image of a week-old man appeared in her parents' thoughts. They could not believe that their daughter would desire to marry a man who was much older than her age. The Duke was known as a white-haired old man. But the Marquis was much more surprised when he heard his wife agreeing. He could not believe that she would allow it to happen. The Marchioness then turned to him, claiming that they had been far away from each other, so she had not been able to figure out who he truly desired. When she asked if he ever conversed with the Duke about it, he said no, but as he expected him to attend the ball, he decided to have a word with him there. She then agreed and turned to her daughter, suggesting having a family vacation on the day of the event. Manhwa could not believe that she would have that plan in an instant. What was more surprising was that she planned to go to Alesia, which was quite far from their country. Eve tried to clear their understanding as she explained that the Duke didn't look as old as the rumors claimed. Although her mother was smiling, she had firmly told her to start packing her things. She was clearly disregarding her explanation. Finally, it was already the day of the imperial ball. Lady Manhwa was getting ready for it and was choosing her outfit carefully. While she was deciding what fan she should bring, her maid suddenly noticed something. She was confused as to why the lady was being quite enthusiastic for someone who claimed to hate balls. That made her wonder if it was because of the Grand Duke, who was not elderly, which the lady didn't want to hear. But the maid couldn't ignore it, as rumors were already flooding the estate. If the Grand Duke doesn't attend the ball or turns out to be old, her mother would send the lady for recovery abroad. The maid was just worried if the Grand Duke would really come. Mayvaya felt the same, so she asked for Raven, as she needed to confirm it again. However, the maid said that she had not seen him since morning, which made the lady assume that he might already have escaped. That night at the royal ballroom, the people were busy talking about how stunning the Grand Duke's adopted son was, who was visiting the capital. They also heard that he had a lover's quarrel with Lady Mayvaya on the main street. Because of that, they judged the lady as being so haughty yet falling for pretty faces. But one also commented that they couldn't blame her since she was beautiful and famously business-savvy. A man interrupted and opposed that as he heard that her quarries were overrun by demons and closed. Suddenly, a lady defended Mayvaya by saying it was already years ago, and besides that, the lady was not someone they could casually slander. While they were busy gossiping about Mayvaya, the topic of their talk was just in the corner of the room, without a care in the world about her surroundings. She was enjoying her alone time, drinking some good wine while waiting for the Grand Duke's arrival. However, despite having a fine wine and quality classical music, the lady was getting worried as time passed by without a single trace of him. She thought that his attendance was implied by that raven, but she was doubting if she had just made a mistake. When Mayvaya was busy thinking, the eldest daughter of the Elaine family came to her and greeted her. She then asked why that person was not coming. After hearing her question, she thought that Lady Monica must have heard about the Grand Duke, which would be troublesome knowing her personality. Just imagining her mocking Mavia's taste and going after a grandpa stresses her out already. However, Lady Monica was more concerned about her not responding. When it confused Mayvaya, the lady got annoyed and clarified that she was talking about her not answering any of her letters. While she was pointing her fan at Mayvaya, it confused her even more, as she didn't recall receiving any at all. But suddenly it came to her mind that maybe she was referring to that day at the boutique. Lady Elaine said that she got it right, and she waited daily for her reply. However, Mayvaya told her that it was not worth replying to. That annoyed the lady even more, but it didn't affect her, as she knows how to comfort her more than anyone. Lady Morgana then stood up, held her hand and asked for her forgiveness. It was because of recent troubles that made her take things out on Monica unfairly. After that, she went closer to her and asked for her pardon with a big smile on her face. Her actions made Lady Elaine shy when she heard her saying that her consistency was admirable, which made her push Mayvaya away, as she didn't need any of her apologies. She told her that flattery wouldn't work on her, but Mayvaya thought that she was not referring to her being admirable. After a while, Monica said that she came there to talk about business and not for trivial chatter. Usually, business matters should go to her parents, but that concerns her personal territory. She was talking about the demon-infested quarry Mayvaya bought 10 years ago. Lady Elaine was sponsoring demon researchers, so she asked if she could purchase that land from her. However, Mayvaya immediately said no, which confused and surprised Monica since it was useless to her. Before she could argue more, the attendant announced the arrival of Prince Gilbert Kalakis. Everyone was astounded by his looks and how stunning he was while smiling at the people inside the hall. Just hearing the person who arrived made Mavia's head ache, as the one they wanted wouldn't come. While she was talking about how people were blinded by his beauty, Lady Elaine was already focused on that man. A moment later, she hurriedly went to that person and excused herself from Mayvaya, which startled her. All the ladies had already gathered around Gilbert, including Monica, and were happy having a talk with him as if they were under his spell. It made Mayvaya worried, as she didn't know that Lady Elaine knew that man and wondered when the two of them had met. Since she wouldn't let her friend get close to Gilbert, just like in the story, she went after her to stop Monica from being too close to that man. Mayvaya interrupted them and asked her friend if they should continue discussing the business they were talking about. However, Gilbert approached the lady, but she reasoned that she had come there to see Monica, not him. The two started to pick at each other again, which caught everyone's attention, and they assumed it was a lover's quarrel. Gilbert already expected her rejection, but he couldn't leave her just like that, even though she wanted to leave already with her friend Monica. He even told her that they had matters to discuss, which everyone thought might be about the engagement. Mayvaya was getting irritated and said that if it was about the powers she had shown the other day, he could talk about it freely since no one there would believe him anyway. However, the man said that he would never tarnish a lady's honor and kneel before her in front of everyone. He happily asked for her hand to marry him by ancestral contract. Gilbert planned it all along since public proposals were hard to refuse. Even if the lady refused, marrying his father became impossible, so there was no escape this time for Mayvaya. He then took out the ring he had prepared in advance and asked the lady to spend their life with him and become his wife. However, he didn't expect that Mayvaya would do something that would shock everyone, including Gilbert. A disgrace to his reputation after a proposal he made so smoothly that he didn't think of any escape route for the lady. Mayvaya was even happier after spilling that wine on him in front of everyone present at the ball. Meanwhile, the Grand Duke came to visit His Majesty secretly. He wondered if he had offended him somehow. However, that cold man said that he merely accepted an invitation, so there was nothing for them to worry about. If he was talking about the ball, they asked him why he had come there instead of going to the party. The Grand Duke answered that he got curious about who was currently ruling the empire and said that nothing had changed since then. 15 years ago, when the current emperor was still young, he confronted his father about the north, disregarding royal decrees, and said to issue a command. However, His Majesty told his son not to provoke the north, as they were the only ones who could control the demon hordes. At that time, his father told him something that he couldn't even believe. He was so surprised at a young age that he stopped persuading his father to confront the north. The late emperor told him that the Grand Duke was not human like them, which was clearly true, judging by the cold air surrounding him. Back at the banquet hall, Gilbert couldn't accept the humiliation he suffered from Lady Mayvaya and couldn't control his anger anymore towards her madness. The lady reasoned that she was dreaming, as it was too absurd to be real, and apologized to that man. Gilbert couldn't accept her excuse, as it was not how a mature lady should behave. He even asked the people if they all agreed with him, but it seemed like no one wanted to confront Lady Mayvaya with him. They commented on how it turned out to be a one-sided proposal, and that the prince must be lovesick, that he was so desperate to get married to the lady. Even though he was the one who got humiliated in front of everyone, they all still mock him as if he were the one at fault. Gilbert just laughed at them and couldn't believe what was happening at that moment. On the other hand, Lady Mayvaya already expected it and thought that Gilbert should have chosen his target better. The Labina Empire once ruled vast territories, but failed naval ventures crushed royal authority. Now, 3 wealthy houses hold more true power in the empire than that of the imperial members. One was House Elaine, where Monica came from. Then there was also House Morgas. The last one was House Morgana, where Mayvaya belongs. Among them, the Morganas were renowned for exceptional virtue. Meaning in conflicts, blame usually fell on their opponents. Suddenly, the lady's mother told her that if she needed help, she just needed to say the word, but Mayvaya just thanked her for worrying about her. One of Gilbert's friends came in and talked to the lady. He told her that he totally understands her feelings, but she should consider his friend's dignity. Mayvaya knew him, and it was Baron Colin. She told him that he should act wisely because the rope he was holding wouldn't save him. Gilbert has already lost his temper. In the north or there, he thought that everyone was a madman. When the lady heard that, she even had the nerve to tease him more and said that it was a self-introduction. The man already had enough and was about to lose his composure, but it seems like Mayvaya was not afraid at all. Before things got out of control, an attendant went to the lady to inform her that His Majesty requested her presence. That confused the lady, as she had no business or whatever related to the emperor. The attendant didn't mention anything to her either, and just said that he had been waiting for her. A moment later, the man guided Mayvaya to His Majesty. While walking in the hallway, she could feel the cold as the rain was pouring heavily. As she looked at the back of the attendant, the atmosphere around her was kind of odd, and she felt it was something serious. His usually neat appearance was disheveled, and she wouldn't have missed his pale complexion as well. Because of that, she stopped walking and asked the advisor why the emperor had summoned her. That man looks terrified, and the only thing he could say to the lady was that she brought it upon herself. His answer surprised Mayvaya. She couldn't understand what he meant by that, so she needed more explanation. However, her attention turned to somewhere as she heard people talking not far from them. What was more interesting was that one of them stated her name. As the lady focused on their voices, she became somewhat familiar with them. Because of that, Mayvaya excused herself from the advisor to get closer to the people who were having a conversation about her. Later on, a woman was comforting a man while wiping his face with a handkerchief. She told him that Lady Mayvaya had always been odd and that a childhood head injury caused strange behavior. It turns out it was Lady Elaine who was helping Gilbert clean his face with the wine spilled on him. The man was a bit irritated at her sudden action and asked why she went that far for him. When she started answering him that she understood him, Lady Mayvaya was already behind her. They had no idea that she was already listening to them, while Monica continued to say that she also disliked Mayvaya as well. She even told him that she wished the lady had less fortune than hers and wanted her to become miserable. As she listened to Monica, the lady wondered if it was better to just ignore her. If she withdraws, that improper relationship ends, and they might even live happily as lovebirds. However, she knew it wouldn't end well in the future, and it might even affect her, so she told Lady Elaine to stop already. Monica was in great shock and wanted to know when she appeared there. Mayvaya didn't bother at all to answer her question and just looked at her friend with a stern look on her face. Judging by her reaction, Lady Elaine knew that she had heard everything, so there was no need for her to explain things to her. Since Mayvaya still considered Monica her friend, she gave her first and last advice. She told her to get away from that man behind her, and it would be best if she never met him again. Just hearing all those words and insults from her already lost Gilbert's composure. Because of that, he suddenly ran towards where the lady was and said that she shouldn't have come there. His actions surprised Mayvaya and Lady Elaine so much that they couldn't respond to it as it was so sudden. More importantly, the lady didn't expect that Gilbert would really attack her with just her words. She let her guard down and regretted that she had interfered with their conversations. While she already accepted that ending that was inevitable, the lady who was behind that man tried to stop him. However, it seems like it was too late, and Mayvaya was just smiling as if that end was okay for her. Suddenly, someone stopped Gilbert and said that he should have known his limits, which surprised the lady. It seemed like the grip was hurting Gilbert, so he ordered that person to release him. However, that man had no intention of letting him go, as he told him that it was time for him to go home now, while calling him son. The descriptions of the Grand Duke in the script were all bizarre. Strong enough to easily tame ferocious demon beasts, yet so reclusive that few had seen him and those who did couldn't speak of it. His pitch-black uniform exuded decadence, with unnatural allure in those devilishly long eye corners. Looking at him, Mayvaya thought that it seemed so insufficient even for novel descriptions. Her eyes widened upon seeing the Grand Duke with her own eyes, and she even called him honey in her mind. Gilbert tried to explain to his father that it was a misunderstanding and that the lady had set him up. However, the guards still escorted him out while he still resisted them and asked his father why he was being cruel only to him. He was calling for his father to answer him as they dragged him away from that place. Suddenly, the Emperor appeared in the corner and asked Lady Mayvaya for a request. Since His Majesty arranged her meeting with the Grand Duke, he wanted her to inform His Grace that he would go already. The lady couldn't refuse it, so she agreed to his request. She realized that the Grand Duke was the one who summoned her through an imperial aid. It seems like His Grace heard their conversation and said that the Emperor had bad manners and still expected to be spoon-fed. He looked at His Majesty with a stern look, which scared him, so he quickly excused himself and ran away as fast as he could. The aide, on the other hand, volunteered to escort Lady Monica, so Mayvaya and the Grand Duke had their private talk, to which she agreed. When the two of them were left alone, the lady turned her gaze to look at the Grand Duke. Every bit of his looks had a villain vibe, but he was not so scary for her that she would run away immediately. His handsomeness caught the lady's attention, and it was the first thing she really noticed. Suddenly, her fantasies were interrupted by the Grand Duke's question. He wanted to know why Mayvaya refused Gilbert's proposal. For him, his son seemed an unproblematic marriage candidate, so he couldn't understand her intentions. The Grand Duke wanted to know the reason why she chose to marry someone like him instead. It was because she had seen futures where she didn't choose him, but she couldn't possibly say that. In the story, Gilbert immediately dumped Mayvaya in the north after marriage, then called for her to come to the capital with bad intentions half a year later. When she read those letters from him, she was happy and naive at the same time, as she was unaware of the horror that awaited her. The Grand Duke told her that she didn't need to stick with Gilbert and that she could stay there in the north if she resented his son. He was the only one who warned her before, however, Mayvaya was more scared of him than of his son. Because of that, she tried to escape only to be caught by Gilbert, yet the Grand Duke still went to see her. She was locked up in a cell, and he offered to help her return to the north with him. He was willing to lend his hand until the end, but she never took it even once. The lady had no idea why the Grand Duke helped Mayvaya, but she was certain about one thing. If she had taken his hand, that tragic ending wouldn't have come to her. This time, Miss Kim, who possessed Mayvaya, would stay with the Grand Duke. So instead of answering his questions, she called his name, Edith, and asked him to dance with her. The man didn't respond immediately and pondered it when he heard her say dancing. Mayvaya told him that she would answer any questions he had if he danced with her, although she had no plans of telling him the truth. She was thinking of answering him by saying that he was beautiful, so she should grab his attention now. However, despite how excited she looked at that moment, anticipating a positive response from him, the Grand Duke didn't hesitate to say no to her. The lady assumed that dancing could be difficult for him, so she suggested teaching him, but the man still said no. When she wanted to know the reason for it, the Grand Duke honestly told her that it was bothersome. Mayvaya couldn't process that properly, and she couldn't believe that it was his only reason for rejecting her. She then repeated what he said earlier, that he was curious. However, the Grand Duke said that the bother outweighs his curiosity now. Because of that, he wanted to leave already and asked her if he could return home. He even told her that future letters were too troublesome, so they should end everything there. It was obvious on his face that he had no interest in anything except that he was already annoyed. Mayvaya couldn't help but think how fastidious he was, more than she expected him to be. She tried once more to persuade him by saying that it would be a waste if he just left like that without dancing, but the man reasoned that he was an introvert. Since he was too lazy to try anything and wanted to go home already, he then excused himself from the lady. Mayvaya was more determined now because it might be her last chance of seeing the Grand Duke, so she quickly grabbed his coat and stopped him. That halted the man from walking away from her, and he turned to look at the lady, waiting for her to talk. Because of her determination, she abruptly acted cute in front of him and said that she desperately wanted to dance with him, as she had no partner. It was too late for the lady to realize what she had just done in front of the cold Grand Duke. She regrets it so much that she wanted to end her life at that moment, as it was too embarrassing for her. However, the man unexpectedly asked the lady if one dance was enough for her to stop bothering him. It greatly surprised Mayvaya that she couldn't understand what he was saying to her. Because of her confused reaction, the Grand Duke held the lady's hand and asked her again if one dance was enough. Mayvaya couldn't answer him properly, as she didn't expect that charming him with her looks would actually work. The two of them went inside the banquet hall where the nobles were busy dancing and enjoying the party. With her hands supporting the Grand Duke while dancing, Mayvaya was confident she could lead him. She knew she could handle him while acting like she cared for the man, as the floor was slippery. The cold Grand Duke was apologizing to the lady, as he was terrible at dancing. He even honestly told her that he forced himself to come there because he wanted to get to know her better. Mayvaya didn't expect that, as she thought that he hated her, given the way he acted on their first meeting. But the Grand Duke was embarrassed to admit that it was the opposite. The lady then stops him from talking and tells him to just listen to her from that moment on, as she would teach him everything from start to finish. That was how Lady Mayvaya pictured herself when she went to the banquet hall. However, she didn't expect it to go that far, that people would avoid the man in front of her. A woman even made a rude comment in front of her kid to keep quiet if she wanted to survive. Their eyes were on them as if they were the center of everyone's attention, which made the lady so awkward. It made her regret her decision, and she wanted to run away already, but she controlled her tears and bravely faced her situation. Mayvaya needed to stay calm if she didn't want to end up dancing with no music at all. She then convinced herself that she could do it, as she had already come that far to invite the cold Grand Duke. Looking at him, she was even more determined to conquer that man and show what she had. When the two started dancing, people began to talk and wondered why the lady was with someone like that. On the other hand, some praised her, as it was the most beautiful dance ever seen from the lady. Whether it was a compliment or an insult, the Grand Duke didn't like any of it, so he glared at them. It was clear based on their reaction that they were afraid of that man, so they didn't dare to continue their talk about them. As the music kept going, the two unexpectedly matched each other's movements as if they had already practiced it. Lady Mayvaya wouldn't let the Grand Duke outshine her, so she showed them her graceful dance moves. In the middle of their dance, the lady confronted his grace, as she knew he never even set foot in high society, so she wanted to know where he learned to dance. However, the Grand Duke answered her that he had never learned and was just glad it didn't look strange at all. After hearing that, Mayvaya complimented him by saying that he was like he was born with it. The man didn't deny that it may be the case, which made the lady laugh while dancing. She then told him that they were really a good match and that he was not as difficult as the rumors say. That surprised the Grand Duke, as if it was the first time that someone told him such a thing. Looking at the lady, he couldn't help but think that the lady doesn't show any fear towards him, and she expresses her affection so openly. That made the Grand Duke want to trust her. However, an illusion interrupted his thought and corrupted his mind that it was only one of that woman's tricks. Because of that, he called the lady's attention while they were still dancing. With a smile on his face, he told her that whatever she was aiming for, he would play along with her little game for now. When Mayvaya returned home, she immediately took a bath and thought of what the Grand Duke said at the banquet hall. Despite how clearly she remembers his words, she still has no idea what he meant or what he was planning to do with her. At that time, he only stated that he would play along with her little game, so she misunderstood him. She thought that he accepted her and that he was proposing to her in the middle of their dance. However, it seemed like she was mistaken. The Grand Duke told her instead that they would continue about that topic after he returned, which greatly confused the lady. She was waiting for him to give more explanation, but his grace used magic in that moment in the middle of the banquet hall. Before he totally disappeared, he even happily excused himself from the lady as if he were telling her that he had a great time dancing with her. After that, he vanished into thin air, leaving Mayvaya all alone and speechless. That was the reason why the lady was so furious, as she didn't know when she could meet that man again. He could show up 10 years later or more, which made her blood boil even more just thinking about it. Since she had no other choice and couldn't do anything about it, she decided to sleep first and think about it after she got 20 hours of sleep. The moment Mayvaya closed her eyes, a weird dream suddenly appeared. In that dream, a woman was ordering that person she called Cinderella to scrub the floor harder. It turns out it was actually her who looked like a villain. She even threatens that person that if she didn't like it, dinner that night would just be stir-fried potatoes. The Cinderella whom she was referring to was none other than Gilbert Kalakis. In that dream, that man was begging Mayvaya to have mercy on him while calling her mother. Because of that revelation, the lady woke up from that nightmare, gasping for air. She was so disgusted that she vomited because of that dream. Her maid, who brought a towel for her, asked how much she had even drunk last night, to which she answered that it was not because of that. The girl then told her to wipe her mouth a little, and inquire if she should tell his grace to come back later. When Lady Mayvaya had no idea what she was talking about, the maid told her that the Grand Duke of Kalakis was waiting in the drawing room for her. A moment later, his grace had indeed arrived at their manor, and his cold demeanor had not changed a bit. The lady was still half asleep and couldn't grasp the situation, as it was still early in the morning when the Grand Duke arrived there. She told him that if it was not urgent, she asked if they could talk later, as she really didn't feel well. After leaving like that yesterday, Mayvaya wondered what he was doing there at dawn. It was as if she still had no energy, as she was still so sleepy. Suddenly the Grand Duke stated his name, Edith. When the lady was confused, he told her to call him by his name instead of speaking formally with him. However, Mayvaya refused to do that, as she has a foul mouth, so she had to keep it nicely wrapped most of the time. Even if that was the case for her, the Grand Duke still couldn't help but do it at that moment. He then cast a magic circle all of a sudden on top of her, which greatly surprised the lady. She misunderstood his action and thought that he was cheating using his magic, so she stopped him immediately. Mayvaya thought that the Grand Duke was trying to get rid of the bride, which was her, so the contract wouldn't count. That was why she stopped him from using his magic. However, the lady was mistaken, as he just took out a piece of paper, which surprised her. The Grand Duke then smiled and said that even if she was half asleep, she still had to go over the marriage details while calling her Eve. When Manhwa saw the documents, she realized it was the marriage certificate from the previous generation's contract, even stamped with the imperial seal. She thought that the Grand Duke was supposed to be lazy, and she also wondered why he was talking to her so softly. To her, it feels like he was not coaxing a person but more like he was coaxing a cat or a dog. She then asked if those documents were the reason why he disappeared yesterday, to which His Grace answered that she was sharp as ever. The lady requested that he inform her where he was going the next time before he vanished. Otherwise, she might end up saying some very ugly things. The Grand Duke said that if that were the case, then he would happily adjust to his wife's wishes. His face suddenly changed into a serious one, and he told the lady that he was not marrying with divorce in mind. When Manhwa heard that, she also thought the same, as long as he didn't make her life a living hell. It was still hard for the Grand Duke to believe her, so he asked if she was really going to spend the rest of her life with a guy she had just met yesterday. However, the lady told him that there were plenty of arranged marriages that turned out just fine. His Grace also informed her that having kids might be tough, as his constitution was a bit like that, but it seems like that was okay for Manhwa. She thought that she didn't have any romantic notions about 6 children either. Since they had already discussed the important part, the Grand Duke let her ask anything she was curious about, so the lady took that chance to know about his age. However, he didn't answer her directly. Instead, he told her that he once met the first head of Kalaki's back before he even became a Grand Duke, when he was just a dumbass wandering around dangerous places with that stupid pretty boy face. When Manhwa heard that, she commented that he had to be ancient. She also added that it wouldn't be surprising if he had the great-great-great-grandkids of his great-grandkids running around by now. But the Grand Duke said that he never had kids. The lady asked if he had lovers or any secret amour, which he apologized for, as she would be disappointed since he had none of that. Setting aside those kinds of questions, he was wondering if she was not curious at all about how he was still alive after all this time. The Grand Duke asked the lady if she realized what it meant that he had met the very first Kalaki's lord. Manhwa smiled as she knew about that. However, she told him that right now, she was more interested in his social life, and she would ask about the secret to his freaky long life when she was older. Though if he wants to tell her the secret to staying young at that moment, she wouldn't mind at all. She added that if he ever feels like sharing the secret to his immortality, he should let her know, as she got to pass it down to her mom and dad, which surprised the Grand Duke, as he didn't expect that kind of answer from her. He then said that he would do that if he ever felt like it. The Grand Duke asked if there was more she wanted to know, so the lady answered that the questions were done, but she had one condition. Manhwa said that she was about to settle down in a foreign land, with no one but one trusted maid she could rely on. No parents, no friends, and his territories probably way colder and harsher than theirs. It was scary for her that she could run into people who hate her or monsters. When His Grace heard that, he urged the lady to say what the condition was that she was so desperate about, but it would depend on what it was before he could agree. The lady then told him that one bruise she got would be worth 1,000,000 marca, which greatly surprised the Grand Duke. She explained that minor injuries were equivalent to 1,000,000 marca, burns would cost 50 million marca, fractures or amputations would be anywhere from 100 million to 200 million marca, and as for death, she would throw that in for free. After saying that, she happily asked the Grand Duke's opinion about it. But it seems like His Grace didn't like that at all and asked what she thought his territory was. Manhwa knew that it sounded ridiculous that a Grand Duchess would get hurt living in a Grand Duchy. However, she told him that she was not exactly his average Grand Duchess. She was heading to a seat of power that had been left vacant for way too long, and someone might not like the idea of an unplanned new power stepping in. Manhwa was not the type to just sit back and do nothing, so she told him that he just thinks of it as a safety net since she was the type who prepared for every possible scenario. However, that was just her excuse because her real reason was something else. The condition she set was for that man, Gilbert Kalakis. That person was heading north too. Once the lady gets to the north, she will be alone, while Gilbert has his own little circle of loyal dogs. Even if she plays dirty, there is no guarantee she will win. At the very least, if she gets smacked around, she deserves to get paid for it. The Grand Duke suggested that she could just bring an escort if she was that scared. He would even let her drag every last soldier from her family's private army if she wanted. However, Manhwa told him that there was no need to waste manpower like that when she already has a husband who is more impressive than anyone else out there. For his grace, she didn't look like she trusted her supposedly impressive husband, but the lady reasoned that they were only meeting for the second time now. When the Grand Duke heard that, he thought that she was bold, but she was more like a scared little rabbit. The lady winks at him while saying that a rabbit of a wife sounds perfect to her. His Grace then told her that if she already agreed with everything, she should sign the documents first, and then he would follow right after. Before she did it, something had caught her eye while looking at the Grand Duke. She stared at him for a moment, which confused his Grace as to what it was. Manhwa then called his name, Edith, and went on top of the table to get a closer look at something. She held his face to let him know that his eyes had a hint of violet in them, which startled the Grand Duke. The lady said that they were like a purple star sparkling in the depths of a dark blue ocean. When his Grace asked what she was talking about, Manhwa thought that he was being embarrassed, and that was kind of cute. She just told him that it was nice to learn a little more about him before they get married, because the thought of him knowing much about her while she barely knows anything about him felt a little unfair for her. The Grand Duke suddenly asked if she was not scared at all. That confused the lady, as she didn't know if he was talking about the territory or the marriage, but his Grace said that he meant him. That confuses her even more because, for her, handsome people didn't scare her. The Grand Duke didn't bother to talk about that more and just asked if she had other conditions, to which she answered no. Since it was all settled, they just needed to say yes if they accepted the marriage. His Grace agreed and said yes, and after, the lady also did the same. When the contract had finally been signed by both of them, the document suddenly caught on fire and turned to ashes little by little. It was real magic. The lady knew about it, but seeing it with her own eyes was something else. That made her wonder what kind of person they were, the one who made that contract. When the Grand Duke heard that, he asked her if she wanted him to tell her where their grave was, but the lady didn't want that, as something told her he would actually go through with it if she asked. At long last, the promise between their families has been fulfilled. She was now Manhwa Kalakis, the Grand Duchess. Just like what the Grand Duke said, she thought that she really became the Grand Duchess of Kalakis. However, she feels less like she was holding a Duchess banner and more like she just got drafted into the Demon King's army. Manhwa then asked when they would return to the estate, to which the Grand Duke answered whenever his wife wishes. After hearing that, she teased him by asking if he would grant it if she said she wanted to leave right now. His Grace told her that he couldn't refuse that, but the lady was just joking. She told him that she should at least see her parents before she goes. Suddenly, the Grand Duke senses something and says that there were more people she should say goodbye to besides her parents, which confuses the lady. A moment later, her maid, Sarah, came in and apologized for interrupting while she had a guest. She informed Manhwa that Lady Elaine sent a letter, so she thought she should deliver it immediately, which confused her, as it was too early in the morning. The lady thought it was probably because of what happened that day and knew that Monica was more interested in Gilbert than the Grand Duke. Since the letter had already been received, she had opened it and thought that Monica was probably curious why she hated Gilbert enough to call him a bastard. As she read it, she expected the content would be like that. It is also written there that she would like to personally deliver an invitation to her party. When the Grand Duke saw her reaction, he asked if it was urgent, to which she replied no, saying that the lady just wanted to deliver her birthday party invitation, so it was not urgent as she could reply later. Upon hearing that, the maid told her that she should hurry a little, which confused the lady, and she asked her why. Sarah then answered that the courier said Lady Elaine herself had left the mansion along with the letter. That gave her a headache, and she commented that Monica shouldn't even bother asking when she should come if she was coming anyway. Suddenly, the Grand Duke told the lady that he could offer her a place to hide, but she refused it if it was at the Grand Duke's estate, as she would rather not run into his eldest son. When his Grace heard that, he seriously told her that he could take care of it if that was the reason. However, Manhwa refused it and said that it was fine. She knew that if he took care of it, she doubted the place would remain on that side of the world. The Grand Duke told her that the place doesn't matter as long as it is cleaned up, so she just lets him know whenever she needs him. His seriousness didn't matter to the lady, and she said that it was really fine for now. After that, she asked him if it was okay for him to continue their conversation in the salon, as it looked like another guest might be barging in soon. The Grand Duke agreed with her, stood up, and said that they should head out right away since seeing her cute pajamas makes him wonder what her regular clothes look like, which confused the lady. When she asked what was wrong with her clothes and looked at herself in the mirror, that was when she realized that she was still in her pajamas until now, which made her embarrassed, so she quickly asked her maid to help her get ready to go out. Meanwhile, in the north, a man was talking and said that he had never seen such a beautiful person in his life. He also added that the lady was so noble that she seemed to change the flow of the air itself. The man continued that if she were to become the Grand Duchess, he thought even the glaciers of Esmeralda might melt. It turns out they were talking about Lady Mayvia, who was like a goddess of spring. However, the other man stated that the eldest son dared to approach someone like her without knowing his place while pointing to Gilbert, who was lying down on the bed. He then asked the green-haired man what happened to the proposal, and if the lady cancelled it because she started to hate the Grand Duke's family over that incident. The man answered that his grace ran out early in the morning, trying to catch Lady Eve while he dragged the eldest son away, and the lady went to dance with the Grand Duke. He even told him that they couldn't get into the ballroom, but he heard it was utter chaos. The other man was shocked to hear that and couldn't believe the lady danced with his grace. He wondered how such a beautiful flower got tangled up with Kalakis. The green-haired man then said that it wouldn't have been better if she had married their second son instead, but the other guy told him that underage marriage was banned by law. He was really worried that someone so fragile and innocent like the lady could endure it. Suddenly, Gilbert, who had just woken up, commented that they were losing their minds. He finds it funny and ridiculous that they said Lady Eve was a delicate and innocent woman. He even told them that he could tell them in detail what kind of mask the new Grand Duchess was wearing. The green-haired guy paused for a moment as if it caught his attention. However, a second later, he asked his companion when they were returning to the estate as if he was ignoring the young master. That really angered Gilbert because it looks like his opinion or any words he says don't matter to them. The brown-haired man told him that they should get ready to leave, as they didn't know when his grace would decide to go. After hearing that, the other guy asked what they should do with the eldest son, to which he answered that he could wrap him up nicely and keep him out of sight from his grace and Lady Eve. He even suggested that he could just tie him to the back of the carriage. Gilbert suddenly raised his hand to interrupt them. When the green-haired man asked what he wanted to say, the eldest son answered that he would like to say goodbye to his friend if they were leaving soon. The guy couldn't believe that he actually had one, that someone actually befriended a piece of trash like him who beats his brother. He even commented that birds of the same feather flock together. When the eldest son heard that, he got more annoyed as the guy dared to bark at his own master like a stray mutt. However, he was not threatened at all and told Gilbert to watch his mouth, as their master was not him but his grace the Grand Duke. The other guy also calmed the eldest son, but it didn't work at all. He used his power to summon his sword while saying that they haven't come to their senses and that an unruly dog needs discipline. Gilbert thought that even if there were 2 elite knights, with some bloodshed, nothing was impossible. He knew that it wouldn't be easy if his father heard about it, but he couldn't just let those bastards who dared to ignore him get away with it. After his sword appeared, he told them that it was the result of their own doing, so they shouldn't regret it later. When he was prepared to attack the two, he felt something strange while holding his sword. It looks like it came from sewers, as it was covered with mud that has a very strong foul smell coming from it. The young lord throws it to the ground after the 2 men tease him, saying that it was the friend he was talking about, a perfect match for him. He punched the table near him and yelled as they dared to look down on him while stating his name, Gilbert Kalakis. The green-haired guy commented on how he also had a foul temper and told him to do something about that smell. But the other guy asked if the friend he wanted to call was Baron Colin Turner, to which he answered yes. After hearing that, he told him that he would deliver his message, so he should calm down already, but he doubts he would come, given the situation. Instead of thanking him, the young lord said that he should have just done that from the start. The brown-haired guy called the other man's name, Procyon, and told him that they should leave already, which he agreed to. After locking the door to that room, Procyon asked if it was okay to call the eldest son's friend, as he was worried he might cause trouble again. However, the guy said that his grace was in the capital right now, so if he still stirs up trouble knowing that, he would pay dearly for his stupidity. A moment later, Baron Colin Turner visited his friend Gilbert. He was just informed now that he was going back to the estate, so he advises him to make sure he lies low and keeps quiet. The young lord took his advice since His Grace, the Grand Duke himself, came to the capital. He then looks at the Baron and says that there is something he needs his one and only friend to do for him. However, the man refused it if it was about Lady Manhwa, since he values his precious life. Gilbert stated that it was not about her but the brown-haired maid who was always around the lady. He told him that if he wrecks her, maybe he would feel a little better. The Baron stood up and said that he would pretend he didn't hear that, as she was not the kind of woman who would sit quietly if someone touched her people. When he was walking towards the door, the man thought that Gilbert had already lost it, as he couldn't even assess the situation anymore. When he was thinking of switching sides already, the young lord suddenly talked about their joint business venture up north. He heard that the Baron was unhappy with the profit sharing, which halted him from walking. The man turned around and asked furiously if he was being threatened at that moment. Gilbert admitted it easily and said that he helped him out a lot. Even knowing that, he didn't take proper care of him. The Baron thought that he had gotten seriously insane, but he kept talking and told him that if he could just relieve that filthy feeling even a little, he thought he could be very generous. While gripping his shoulder, he added that he could easily share that business profit very generously with his dear friend without any hesitation. After saying that, Gilbert asked Baron Colin one last time if he would grant him that favor. Meanwhile, at the Morgana salon, Lady Manhwa was telling the Grand Duke that there was a misunderstanding. When His Grace asked what she was talking about, the lady said that it was her pajamas. She was so out of it from being sleepy that she didn't realize she was dressed like that, and she hit on Edith. Earlier, when she was about to change her clothes, the lady couldn't help but feel embarrassed, as she had been wearing her pajamas the entire time they were talking. Because of that, Manhwa told him that he shouldn't think that she did it on purpose, as it was not like that, so the Grand Duke shouldn't misunderstand. She even made an excuse that she wore that on purpose, as pajama style was the trend. His Grace just let her be. Suddenly, her ordered coffee arrived. However, she was surprised when the lady saw it, as it was not clearly what she had ordered. When she was about to complain, the girl was frightened at the sight of the Grand Duke. Looking at her, the lady didn't bother to change it, so she just tried to take a sip of the coffee. But it seems like she was not used to it. When the Grand Duke saw her reaction, he asked what was wrong, to which the lady answered that it was nothing. However, His Grace knew the reason already and told her how disappointed he was while reaching for the coffee. He then told her that she had been lying since the very first day of their marriage. After saying that, the Grand Duke left and told the lady to wait for a moment, which surprised her. When she saw where he was going, she wondered what was in the room he entered. Out of curiosity, Manhwa went there to take a quick look and saw various food items on the table, including cookies, strawberries, chocolate, and coffee beans. But there was something more that greatly surprised her and caught her attention. It was the Grand Duke who was getting ready for the kitchen while putting on an apron. After that, His Grace started chopping off those ingredients, and anyone could tell how good he was just by looking at him. When he was done with it, he then poured some water onto it just like a professional who knows what he is doing. After a while, the finished product was presented, and it was the same thing that the lady had in her mind. When the Grand Duke offered it to her, Manhwa was stunned, as she had no idea how His Grace knew how to make a dessert like that. Aside from that, it also looked quite presentable, so she was hesitating to take a bite. She commented that it looks exactly like the picture on the menu, while the Grand Duke hopes she can enjoy it. Since he made it for her, she had no choice but to take a bite and thought that even if it was bad, she had to keep a straight face. However, she didn't expect it to be incredibly delicious, and it was even better than the chef from the royal family in their castle. When His Grace heard that, he told her that she should tell him in advance if there was any capital food she would like to eat when she goes to the north, which surprised her. It was unexpected for him to offer that he would prepare it himself for the lady. She didn't know what to say, as that was very different from what she imagined. Manhwa thought he would make excuses and try to skip coming there because it was a hassle. She even thought he would naturally postpone signing the contract, which made her wonder if she had misunderstood the novel. The lady knew he was definitely portrayed as lazy at the ball, so she didn't know what changed his mind, but there was no need to remind him. Since he was the first to offer it, she told him that she would have the custard pudding while enjoying her dessert. After that, the two of them decided to get some fresh air in a garden with a fountain and sat there. The lady asked if the friend who announced she would barge in that morning had gone back, to which he answered that it seemed that way. When Mayvaya heard that, she suddenly got curious if he could see it or if he was a psychic. Since she wanted to know, the Grand Duke explained that his hearing was better than others, as he could hear even small sounds. The lady looked at him and wondered if it was because he was a transcendent that he had all sorts of abilities. Suddenly something strange crossed her mind which surprised the Grand Duke. She asked why on earth that kid Gilbert was like that if he had so much ability. It annoyed her since there should be something to see and learn from him, so she wanted to know who taught that kid. His Grace then told her that he must have been influenced by his biological father. He continued to say that it just happened that way and that he even tried to become attached to him at first. However, that was before he saw what Gilbert did to his tutors. It was a sight he could never forget, as the kid had a smile on his face while beating his tutor as if he really wanted to kill him. When Lady Mayvaya heard that, she thought that she didn't remember there being a biological father in the novel and, on top of that, an unwanted adoption. In the original work, Edith brought home 2 brothers who were abandoned in the desert, and that was it. She thought that the Grand Duke was just showing kindness, so she wondered what kind of secret that was. The lady then asked if there was a reason why he didn't disown him, to which he answered yes and said that he couldn't tell her the details, but disowning him was impossible. He then continued to say that instead of doing that, if there was anything she wished, be it corporal punishment or anything else, she could do as she pleased. When Mayvaya heard that, she couldn't believe that it was difficult to disown Gilbert and thought that maybe he was being threatened by his biological father. However, it didn't make sense at all to her since he was a transcendent, so she wondered if there was anyone with that much power in the novel other than him. When she recalled her past life reading the novel, she would have finished it to the end if she had known she would reincarnate there. Since the Grand Duke offered, the lady told him that she would like to punish Gilbert. She is the Duchess now, so she has that authority. When she noticed he was not listening to her, she called his name. However, His Grace suddenly asked what she said about bringing one maid with her, if she was someone she cherished. The lady answered that he could say it like that, as that maid had been serving her since she was little. After hearing that, the Grand Duke seemed to be bothered by something but couldn't say anything. However, Mayvaya noticed it, so she asked if something had happened to her maid. It looks like His Grace could sense it from afar and could tell that it was Gilbert's doing. He added that the maid was being dragged away. When the lady heard that, she couldn't help but ask him if she was not hurt at all, to which he answered that she was not for now. Aside from that, he noticed that her maid seemed to be surprisingly cooperative with the people who had taken her away. Meanwhile, the maid's hand was all tied up, and her face was being covered to avoid recognizing those people. She told them that she only did what the young lady told her to while begging for her life, but the man ordered the maid to be quiet. He was getting anxious as he was not planning on dealing with that situation himself. Moreover, the ones he paid to do the job were idiots, as they didn't understand his order and brought the maid to him. Suddenly, his thoughts got interrupted when the maid said that she would tell him everything about the young lady in exchange for her life. When the man heard that, he asked if she was willing to betray her master and tell him everything, to which she answered yes and said that she was just a lowly maid. She even added that her salary was not even that good and told her about her payday, but before she could say more, the man stopped her and said that he would trust her, so she could be quiet already. After that, he then ordered the maid to hurry up and tell him about the young lady. Before saying anything, she shared that she had served the young lady closer than anyone, so it was no exaggeration to say that she knew everything about her, even her fatal weaknesses. Everyone was listening to her intently as she shared one of the young lady's weaknesses, and it was that she couldn't whistle. The man was surprised to hear that, but the maid told her that it was a really important weakness. Since they couldn't understand what she meant, she explained that falconry was a must-have noble skill. However, as the young lady couldn't whistle, she couldn't properly train a falcon. The man was thinking at first after hearing that, while the maid seemed to be happy as her life was now spared, but a moment later, he told her that it was completely useless, so she should give him something real this time, as it was her last chance, which surprised the maid. She begged him and said that she would tell him everything. First, she told the man that the young lady sleeps heavily in the mornings, so deeply that anyone could carry her away, and she wouldn't even notice. Aside from that, the maid told her that she wouldn't eat sweet potatoes, cucumbers, and onions, so if he plans to poison her, he should avoid those ingredients. When the man heard all of those things, he couldn't help but think that it was pure madness. He thought that the young lady was crazy, but her maid was even crazier. Since he couldn't obtain any important information at all, he thought that he might just end that maid's life. She was not useful at all, and besides that, there wouldn't be any witnesses anyway, so it was okay to do it there. That was what he thought, but he didn't expect someone to arrive and call his name Colin. It was the Grand Duke who suggested he stop already and used his magic on the man. Because of the strong wind created by the magic of his grace, Colin didn't recognize him at first and asked who had interrupted him. Not only did the Grand Duke come there, but also Lady Manhwa, as it was her maid who got kidnapped after all. The lady immediately went to the maid named Sarah and took off the thing that was covering her face. She apologized to her as she was late, and then she hugged her, as Manhwa knew Sarah must have been scared and invited her to go home now, which made her cry. Before they go, the lady reminds Marquis Colin of what she told him back then. It was about the rope he was holding on to. She said that it was a rotting lifeline. The Grand Duke came closer to the man, and it looked like he was very angry. The Marquis was suddenly scared, as he knew what was about to happen to him next just by feeling his presence. Meanwhile, the men hired by Colin to kidnap the maid immediately run away as soon as the Grand Duke punishes the Marquis. A moment later, before the ladies left, His Grace asked the lady if she was sure it was okay just to let them go, to which she answered yes and said that she knew exactly who ordered the kidnapping. Despite saying that, the Grand Duke still told her that if she ever needs them taken care of, she just needs to say the word. The maid got scared after hearing that, but Manhwa was not surprised at all. Instead, she said that there was something she needed from him. His Grace urged her to tell him, as he would handle it if it were anything within his ability. Since he said that, the lady didn't hesitate to say it. She told the Grand Duke to get the bridal room ready and added that she was moving into His Grace's residence that night, which greatly surprised him. While on their way home, the maid and the lady were not talking at all, as Sarah was not saying anything. Manhwa then called out her name, as she was not usually that quiet. Aside from that, she was not hurt badly, but that would definitely leave a trauma. Because of that, the lady decided that she would make sure that the day's incident gets counted as a work injury, which made Sarah very happy, and she thanked the lady. Manhwa didn't expect that reaction from her, and thought that maybe she was worried for nothing. Suddenly, the maid remembered something. She told the young lady that she had been kidnapped while packing, so she didn't finish and asked what she should do. At first, she was happy to hear that the lady was considering the circumstances. However, when she stated that she would be getting a 3-month salary dock, as she also exposed her weakness, she called her a villainess to the bone. That night, Manhwa went to see her mother to talk about something. However, she already knew about it even before the lady could say anything. She asked her daughter if she was there to talk about the scumbags who kidnapped Sarah, which made Manhwa wonder how she knew. Her mother answered that they were the Morganas, so there was nothing that happened in the capital without them knowing. After hearing that, the lady said that she probably also knew that she was heading north. Her mother then asked when she was leaving, to which Manhwa answered that night, and added that she would be moving into the Grand Duke's residence right after dinner. She told them that they had decided to skip the wedding ceremony as they were in a hurry. On paper, she was already the official Grand Duchess anyway. Her mother said that she wouldn't try to stop her since she had made up her mind, but still, she couldn't help worrying since she must have reasons she couldn't tell them. Manhwa couldn't say anything more than to apologize to her. The lady couldn't tell that there was no time left, as the disaster that was about to happen in the north had no other way to stop it. As Manhwa told her mother that night, she really left their house for the Grand Duke's residence. As her parents watched the carriage, the Marquis's wife said that their daughter was really gone. She added that she was still so young, so she asked her husband if she would be okay in the north. Before the Marquis could say something, a maid interrupted them as their daughter asked her to give that letter as soon as she left. The lady's father commented that she knew they would worry and left that behind, but his wife told him that he really didn't know Manhwa at all. They decided to read the letter together, and the first thing they saw was a favor from her. Since she would be leaving for the north, she asked them to put some pressure on Colin's business for her, just enough to make him go bankrupt and end up working in a mine. After stating that, she said that she would invite them to visit the north once in every season. Spring, summer, fall, and winter, so they shouldn't be too sad. Her mother asked if their daughter realized how far and expensive the North was, but her husband told her that it was what they earned all that money for. When his wife agreed with him, he said that Mayvaya was still a bit childish, as she said, but they should trust their son-in-law because, after all, he was someone their beloved daughter chose. Meanwhile, the lady and her maid had passed by a forest that was surrounded by mountains. As the two of them looked outside the window, they had no idea that a place like that existed in the capital. The maid said that it was not going to be easy to go anywhere from there and was a bit worried, as they could start giving them a hard time. They could give the young lady a rock-hard bread or make her clean with freezing water. Mayvaya got anxious as well and assured the maid that they wouldn't go that far. But despite saying that, she knew that even though it was an unexpected Grand Duchess, it would be hard to be welcomed. The lady told her maid that if something like that happens, she would understand if she acts without manners. A moment later, their coachman announced that they had already arrived at the Grand Duke's residence in the capital. After getting down from the carriage, the lady couldn't help but comment that it was certainly magnificent for a Grand Ducal house. Suddenly, Mayvaya became speechless, which halted the maid from getting her luggage as she got concerned. When she was about to ask what was wrong, she was so surprised that she dropped the suitcase she was holding upon seeing the people in front of them. Almost all of the Kalakis' knights were gathered there to greet and to offer their respects to the Grand Duchess. The lady couldn't help but think about what was wrong with those blockhead men of the Grand Duke. They all looked so stiff and cold, with no emotions at all, while they were in their formation, welcoming her grace. Suddenly, one of them stepped forward and introduced himself as Vega, the one who was temporarily overseeing the estate's management. Lady Mayvaya, on the other hand, happily greeted him as well. Upon seeing her smile, the knights couldn't help but adore the lady. One of them shouted, asking for the Grand Duchess's permission to guide her inside the manor. A young man suddenly popped out from behind those sturdy men and stated that his name was Procyon. He was newly knighted that year, and he would be escorting the new Grand Duchess since Vega was busy. The maid whispered to the lady to ask if she had perhaps sent them a gift beforehand, to which Mayvaya answered no. Some of the knights punished Procyon as they had not formally greeted the Grand Duchess, and yet he did it first before them. Vega, on the other hand, got annoyed by their behavior in front of her grace. The young knight didn't care about their beating, as he was waiting for that day. He had prepared an amazing surprise so that her grace would never think of divorcing their master. And so, Procyon's surprise had begun. Since the lady doesn't eat late-night snacks, he was fine with it, as there was always a second time for her. The young knight was sure that the next surprise was the one that her grace would never refuse. The sun, moonlight, and morning dew were best there, on the third floor, not too high nor too low. But what he was most proud of was the bed, and the lady commented on how good it looked. After hearing that, Procyon then told the Grand Duchess that he would make the sleeping arrangements ready. However, when she said that she was not going to sleep there, the knight froze in disbelief. It was hard for him to accept that the Grand Duchess didn't want any of his surprise. At the end of the day, Procyon went to bed crying, as he couldn't impress her grace with the things he prepared. Meanwhile, the Grand Duke was having a hot bath and was taking his time there until Lady Mayvaya settled in a bit. While soaking his body in the hot water, he couldn't help but think of the Grand Duchess. He did tell his men to prepare the things needed properly, but if she didn't like it, he thought that the lady might be sulking, puffing up those little cheeks of hers. If not that, his grace assumed she was already fast asleep in her nightgown. The Grand Duke smiled, thinking about it, and thought that tomorrow morning was going to be interesting. After some time, his grace decided to get up from the bath and went straight to his room. He was still wearing his bathrobe and thought that the lady should be asleep at that moment. However, as soon as he opened the door in his room, someone was there waiting for him. The Grand Duke was so surprised when the lady told him that it had been a while since they last saw each other. When he became quiet at the sight of Mayvaya, who was wearing her nightgown in bed, she called his name, Edith. The moment he saw her looking like that, he went to the door to leave immediately and said that he must have mistaken the room. However, the lady clarified that it was really his. She then told him that the bridal chamber she requested wouldn't be separate bedrooms, but his grace didn't say anything about that. He told the lady that he would just go change first, to which she agreed and reminded him not to think of running away from her, as they would just hold hands and sleep. A moment later, when the two of them were finally lying in bed, there was so much distance between them that Mayvaya commented that holding hands was not asking too much. She even added that now that they were married, they should get a little closer. To make fewer things awkward between them, she told him that he could ask her anything he had been curious about, which caught his attention. When the Grand Duke asked if he really could ask her anything at all, the lady said yes right away. His Grace was curious about how Mayvaya managed to overpower Gilbert last time. Thinking about it, he knew that level of skill would be difficult for an ordinary person. Since there was no reason for the lady to lie, she told him the truth that she actually drank the blood of a magical beast. She added that she made a direct contract with it and received its blood fair and square with proper conditions. When the Grand Duke heard that, he told her that he didn't expect his wife to have ties to magical beasts, but Mayvaya explained that it was not really like that since it was just a straightforward deal. In exchange for guarding the beast's grave, she received some of their power. She honestly told him that she just got lucky that time and doubts she would be able to use that power a second time, as her body wouldn't be able to endure it. His Grace then asked about the characteristics of the beast she had made a contract with, to which she answered that it was a very old one and it could even speak like a person. The lady then didn't want to talk about it anymore and asked the Grand Duke if he could lend his ear for a moment. After hearing what she whispered to him, His Grace was so surprised. He said that he must have misheard her, so he asked her to repeat what she just said. The Grand Duke didn't expect that the lady wanted to know his measurements and ideal type. She told him that it was their wedding night, so they should be asking each other those kinds of questions as well. After hearing that, His Grace couldn't take her anymore and did something to Mayvaya to stop her nonsense. He asked the lady to just get some sleep, as he was not the type of man to talk about things like that. Before he could leave the room, she asked him to let her breathe after His Grace covered her entire body with a blanket. The next day, Mayvaya had to deal with something even if it was still early in the morning. Her maid, Sarah, couldn't do her job properly, as she was trembling so much in fear. It was because the Grand Duke was also with them in that room, giving off a bad aura that scared the maid. When Mayvaya said that she could do it herself, as it looked like too much for her, Sarah told the lady that she was fine. However, she knew that her maid was more scared than usual. It made her wonder if it was because they were in a closed space, like the difference between a lion in a zoo and a wild lion. Suddenly, the Grand Duke put down the newspaper and spread his arm, which surprised both Sarah and the lady. The two of them didn't expect that he would ask for the comb as if he wanted to replace the maid, as she couldn't do it properly. A moment later, the Grand Duke stood behind the lady, and he really helped Mayvaya with her hair. What was more was that His Grace was doing it as if it were not his first time. On the other hand, the lady was surprised while taking a peek at the Grand Duke, as it was unexpected of him. She couldn't help but think how kind he was. Ever since they got married, it was like that His Grace was thinking that she was his person now. That made the lady wonder just how far she could push the Grand Duke with her requests. Mayvaya noticed that His Grace always wears black clothes, so she was thinking if she could ask him to try wearing something different. She thought that his pale skin would look great in anything, but she started to imagine his looks while wearing a classy brown. The lady then also thought of the Grand Duke wearing a navy blue suit that matches the color of his eyes. Lastly, she also wondered what he would look like if he wore something with a hint of her hair color for a playful touch. Because of those thoughts, Mayvaya asked His Grace if there was a reason he always wore black. He just answered that it was mostly because picking colors feels like a hassle for him. After hearing that, the lady then asked if there were any colors he avoided, to which he said no. Since His Grace was okay with anything, she suggested wearing a matching outfit with her before they head north to visit her parents. A moment later, the green-haired knight, who escorted the lady when she first arrived at the Kalakis' residence, was busy in the kitchen cooking. He shouted that this time he would definitely make something that the Grand Duchess would love. The knight was so focused that he was surprised when someone came and asked if his name was Procyon. It was none other than Grand Duchess Mayvaya, who was confused at that moment, as he was a knight, but he was in the kitchen cooking. Procyon explained that most of the staff at the Grand Duke's estate couldn't endure the young master's atrocities, and they ended up getting killed. Because of that, the knights were filling in the position inside the ducal house. When the others saw her, they were surprised as well while greeting her grace. Procyon also informed the lady that the temporary butler who greeted her yesterday used to be the knight captain. After hearing all that, Mayvaya said that she could ask him a favor without feeling too guilty, which confused the knight. She then requested that he grill some meat for her and added that she wanted the smell to soak thoroughly into her clothes. A moment later, the butler told the lady that the young master was staying in that annex, separate from the main state. Looking at the surroundings, Mayvaya thought that it was almost as luxurious as her own bedroom. She couldn't help but question herself if they really think locking him up in a place like that would make him repent. The lady thought that maybe it was the reason that his twisted personality never changed. When the door opened to where the young master was staying, he was surprised to see the person who had visited him. Not just surprised, but annoyed as well. He couldn't help but ask the lady why she was there. However, instead of answering the young master, Mayvaya told him that even if she was not his real mother, he should still watch how he spoke to her. She also informed him that they were moving north that weekend, so as his new stepmother, she would take good care of him. The lady added that she would even fix his picky eating habits while serving him Procyon's ginger special set. The young master couldn't take her acting kind in front of him, so he threw the food that she brought. Because of the loud noise, the temporary butler got worried, so he hurriedly went inside to check what was going on. However, just looking at the mess on the floor, he already had a hint as to what had happened. Vega shouted at the young master, saying that he was being too much. He told him that the Grand Duchess carried that heavy tray all the way there herself, but he treats her like that. Gilbert was not affected at all by his words, while the lady said that she was feeling faint as the tray was too heavy. She was satisfied looking at his scrunched-up face and knew what the young master was thinking, like she was laughing at him. That night, Mavia's maid, Sarah, was worried for the lady and asked if she really had to go through with that. When she asked what she meant by that, the maid answered that it was about her plans for young Master Gilbert and everything after that. The lady let Sarah know that there were people in their world who understood through words, and that there were those who only yielded after she established dominance over them. Mayvaya then asked which type she thought Gilbert was. Without waiting for the maid's answer, the lady told her that it was obviously the latter, but that was not the only thing she was worried about. Sarah was still worried, so she asked Mayvaya how sure she was that there were no side effects from that drug. The lady knew that repeated consumption of beast blood would inevitably cause side effects. However, she wants to teach the young master properly and show him exactly who he dared to mess with. Despite her maid's warning and concern for her, Lady Mayvaya still drank that drug that evening. After that, she went to her husband's room, the Grand Duke's, but she used the window to go inside. His Grace was surprised by his wife's sudden appearance, but Mayvaya could only tell him to get going quickly. Without explaining more details, she just added that they need to finish before the drug wears off. A moment later, the Marquis was so angry at the men he hired, as they wanted compensation when they couldn't even do their job properly. Looking at how beaten their looks were, Marquis Collins said that they were worse than livestock. The two even dared to run away from their master. That was why he was so furious at that moment. Meanwhile, he had no idea he was being watched from that tall building. It was Lady Mayvaya and her husband, the Grand Duke. Looking at it in that way, she couldn't help but say how she was actually a great boss. When the lady asked her husband if he agreed to her while calling him Sir Procyon, his Grace couldn't answer, as he had no idea what she was playing at that moment. That annoyed her a little, as he was not answering her, so he just invited Mayvaya to head down already. Since there was no time to argue or play roles with her, he reached out for her hand. The lady was still pouting, but she held his hand, as there was a more important thing that they needed to do. Before transporting Mayvaya to the ground, he told her to take care, while the lady said that she would be back soon. After that, in an instant, she was gone and transported down below using the Grand Duke's power. When the lady appeared, she greeted the Marquis, which greatly surprised him as he was in the middle of scolding his men. His face looked scared while asking Mayvaya why she suddenly appeared there. However, the lady pretended that she didn't know anyone with the name Mayvaya, as he said. The Marquis asked what nonsense she was playing at that moment, and added that if she was there because of what happened the other day, he told her that he was just following Gilbert's orders. The man even defended himself by saying that she didn't actually get hurt or anything. Mayvaya agreed with him on that. However, she told him that he should have come straight to her instead of her maid. Suddenly, she went closer to him, grabbed his clothes, and said that getting beaten up by a maid was an embarrassment, which greatly shocked the Marquis. He tried to take her hands off him, but he couldn't, as she was really strong at that moment. Before he knew it, a punch was already waiting for him while the lady stated that it was for her maid, Sarah. She followed it again with a punch, and this time it was for her. Then another one was for Raven. The two men who watched it couldn't believe what was happening right in front of their eyes. The scream of pain from the Marquis could be heard in that place. Finally, the lady had enough and stopped beating him. He looked so different from before Manhwa arrived there, as she had really beaten him up so badly. Then the lady turned to look at the two men and asked if they had seen everything, to which they immediately answered no and said that they didn't see anything. However, that was not the answer Manhwa wanted, so she told them that it would be a problem if they really didn't see anything and ordered them to take a good look. The lady wanted them to see that their superior was getting beaten up by a mere maid. After showing him to the two, Manhwa then asked who she was, to which they answered that she was a maid. While she was having fun, the Grand Duke appeared, as he wanted to know if she was already finished, to which the lady said that she was almost done. She even told her husband that it ended faster than she expected, as the Marquis passed out after she beat him up. When His Grace heard that, he invited his wife to go now, as there was still something left that she would surely like, which made her curious. After the married couple left, the Marquis woke up, but he could feel the pain all over his body. His men were carrying him and told their master to bear with it a little longer. Suddenly, a voice could be heard from behind, asking the Marquis why he didn't follow his orders. He was very familiar with that voice, as he was the reason why he was in that state. It was Gilbert Kalakis. Despite being called a bastard, Gilbert didn't seem to care, as he just wanted his answer as to why he disobeyed him. However, the Marquis yelled at him, saying not to give him orders. He even told the young master that he was the one who abandoned his career to chase after that woman. When he couldn't control himself and said that Gilbert might as well just kill Manhwa at that rate, he was in great shock. It seems like he was about to lose control at that moment, hearing those words from the Marquis's mouth. Meanwhile, the lady was enjoying the show from up there and couldn't help but comment that their son seems to have come out while they were away. However, her husband instructed Manhwa to head home already, as he could sense something was about to happen. When the lady asked why, the Grand Duke just said that he would escort her back to the mansion, as she needed to get some rest. She then turned and looked at her husband's face while asking what he would do. The Grand Duke answered that he would wrap things up and come later. Despite saying that while controlling his anger, it was clear how furious he was. Manhwa knew that he would get his hands a bit bloody that night, as she could feel the killing intent coming from him. A few days later, the young master was clearly beaten up by his father, judging by how he looked at the moment. He asked the butler what was going on at the main building, as it had been noisy since morning. The man answered that their masters, the Grand Duke and Duchess, were visiting the Marquis's estate, Manhwa's home, to see her parents and introduce her husband properly to them. After saying that, the butler informed the young master that Her Grace the Duchess asked him to make sure he received the set of food he was carrying. When Gilbert saw it, he immediately ordered him to throw it away, as it even had a note written by his stepmother, saying that he would be punished by the heavens for being a picky eater. For the time being, I'll end this here. Did you enjoy the manhwa? If so, then check back for the next part. And don't forget to subscribe to my channel and stay tuned for more.